Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And we will go ahead and start with our student board member reports. Ms. Bowling?
Good evening, Madam Chairperson, Ms. Mays, Co-Chairperson, Mr. North, Dr. Register, and board members. Team MAC, Teens Making a Change, completed the second phase of student leadership training on November 29th, held at the Nashville Youth Opportunity Center, and it was under the leadership by Mr. James Flatt. The students completed a personal vision statements and then worked in two groups for a TMAC vision statement. The TMAC advisors will meet to complete the process for the final product. Thanks for the opportunity to provide this report, and now I turn it to Aiken.
Thank you, Marquetta. TMAC's next meeting is scheduled for January 14th. And we're asking for the TMAC student advisors to participate in the Mid-South Peace Jam Conference. Ms. Stephanie told me about it earlier, and it seems like really interesting. And it's being hosted by an organization called STARS and Belmont University on January 26th and 27th. Students will spend the weekend with a Nobel Peace Prize winner, Laureate Shirin Ebadi. They'll be spending time learning and sharing and being inspired.
Thank you. If you wouldn't mind making sure that you get your reports to Ms. Hawkins so we can add them to the minutes, we'd appreciate it.
Yes.
Now we will have awards and recognitions. Ms. Libby?
Good evening, Madam Chair and board members. It is a real pleasure to come before the board this evening and introduce to you two absolutely outstanding teachers who have been recognized as such by the state of Tennessee. You'll come forward, please. As you know, this spring, the state of Tennessee designated schools, the top performing schools in the state of Tennessee, as reward schools. We got our fair share, and I know Dr. Register has shared data showing it's actually slightly more than the share you would expect of our district based on our student enrollment, that fell into this top performing category. From those schools, the state identified across the entire state of Tennessee just 15 teachers who were designated as reward school ambassadors. The maximum number of reward school ambassadors from any given district was 2, and once again I'm pleased to say that in Metro Nashville Public Schools, 2 of our teachers have been honored with this distinction. They are, in addition to being outstanding teachers from outstanding schools, they are willing to go across the state and share their best practices with other educators as part of our statewide education reform and improvement effort. So we are very pleased to present to you tonight from Rose Park Middle Math and Science Magnet School, Ms. Frankie Harris. And from Martin Luther King Jr. Magnet High School, Ms. Kathleen Termeyer. And some of you will recognize Ms. Harris from the many award presentations that we have made at Rose Park Middle School recently, including the SCORE presentation last Friday.
She's from that school.
Thank you. We do not have anyone settled, on the agenda for public participation, so we will move past that and on into governance issues. Madam Vice Chair.
The consent agenda is as follows. 1A, approval of minutes, 11/13/12, regular meeting. B, recommendation of contract extension, Amendment A for Design and Construction Management Services, Healy International, Inc., 1-27135. C, awarding of bids and contracts. 1, Learning Labs, Inc., 2, Tennessee College Access and Success Network, 3, Vanderbilt University Center for Science Outreach, 4, NCS Pearson, Inc., 5, Dearborn National Life Insurance Company, 6, Dearborn National Life Insurance Company, and 7, Southern Educational Systems. D, recommended approval of request for compulsory attendance waiver. E, recommended approval of retainer agreement for Southern Strategy Group as lobbyist for Coalition of Large School Systems, which is known as CLASS. And F, recommended approval of fiscal year 2012-2013 operating budget amendment number 1 from the Budget and Finance Committee.
Second.
Consent agenda has been, motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Next on the agenda, student disciplinary appeal. Ms. Johnson, if you wouldn't mind coming up. For any questions that anyone may have, is there a motion on the floor? Now, let me just explain the motions. It's a two-part motion, just so we're clear on this. There is going to be, first part of the motion would be to deny or grant a request for a hearing. Second part of the motion would be to uphold or overturn the recommendations of the administration. Is there a motion on the first part?
I make a motion to deny.
Second.
Motion's been made and second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstaining, Mr. Kingston. Second part of the motion is to uphold or overturn the recommendation of the administration in this matter. Is there a motion?
I move to uphold the recommendation.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstains? Motion's passed.
Madam Chair, I just want to make clear that fellow board members, the reason I'm abstaining is because I have not had a chance to review the case, so I didn't feel it was appropriate to weigh in either way.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Johnston. Next on the agenda, Mr. Henson, if you wouldn't mind coming up, please. State reduction of $3.4 million in BEP funding. All right. Now, board members have asked Mr. Henson to come forward and give us an explanation of our options for the $3.4 million, or you can give us the exact total if you'd like, but in the BEP funding. Are there any questions from the board to Mr. Henson? Dr. Gentry?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I thought you had your hand raised. I'm sorry. Okay. Board members, any questions? Mr. Hayes?
I guess I pose this as an, I don't know if I pose this as a question or not, but under our current employment handbook, although it would not be a popular decision or one that I would relish in even debating, we do have the authority, if we wanted to either talk about it or to do it, to make an across-the-board salary cut. So if we've got 3.4 million, we could decide if we have approximately 10,000 employees, we could take $34 or $340 out of every employee's paycheck.
I'm going to ask Mr. Ott if he's so willing to answer that question. I know that has come up in the past, and I know that there are some state statutes as they relate to certificated employees and their salaries, and whether or not those salaries, once set, can be reduced. I don't know if he's prepared to answer that question at this point in time, but I know that has been discussed in years past with MNEA.
And not anything I'm advocating for, but right, we're in a new environment without a labor agreement in place. We have a handbook, right? So I'm wondering what sorts of freedoms we have if we have less funding available.
Mr. Ott, could you come to the mic, please? Thank you.
I guess right now, we're not currently under a contract or under collaborative conferencing. So I think that option would be open for this board to make that decision.
Mr. Henson, I'd actually like to know what our options are should the $3.4 million not be returned to us from the State Department of Education. Could you talk a little bit about what our options are as far as recovering or not recovering the funding?
I'll be glad to. And again, this is some discussion that was held earlier this afternoon in the board's Budget and Finance Committee meeting. There are really two ways to look at it. One is since we know that at least at this point that there's the possibility that we will not receive this $3,374,933, which is the exact amount, which was reduced from our October state BEP payment, then one course of action would be to attempt to identify expenditures in that amount that could be reduced during the fiscal year. As I explained in the committee meeting, it does become much more difficult, particularly in a school district, once you have begun the school year and now in the middle of a fiscal year, to begin to make reductions because you have personnel in place, you have school schedules in place, you have a number of things that are already in place, not that it's impossible. The other course of action would be to look at this as a revenue shortfall based upon what was originally projected, not unlike if you had a sales tax revenue shortfall or a property tax revenue shortfall from what was originally estimated and budgeted. In that case, you could look at potentially some other areas of revenue that might exceed projections that could cover this. And if not, then monitor it throughout the fiscal year. And at the end of the fiscal year, if you're not able to make this up with additional revenue and or reduction in expenditures, then this would end up being a reduction in the school district's fund balance reserve.
Thank you, Mr. Henson. Any other questions from board members? Mr. Hayes?
Does, if we treat it as a revenue shortfall, does that require council or any other types of approval to utilize fund balance?
It does not. Typically, revenue adjustments are not made at the council level. For instance, we've had, years in the past, particularly 2008, 2009, we had some shortfalls, significant shortfalls actually, in our sales tax revenue. Usually those are looked at the very end of the fiscal year, and if there's a need for what's called a supplemental appropriation, then that's something that is handled through the Metro Finance Director's office, and the council is requested to provide a supplemental appropriation if it appears that expenditures are going to exceed appropriation. But typically, revenue shortfalls, those are monitored throughout the fiscal year, especially since property tax revenue is not made known until the springtime, because the property tax revenue doesn't come in until the second half of the fiscal year.
I don't have a question for Mr. Henson, but are we ready to take up discussion on this
Yes.
in general? Okay, well, I think we basically have two questions before us. The first is whether we want to pursue this funding with the state, with a lawsuit. And I raised that a couple of meetings ago because we are arguably under a deadline of December 16th on when we have to file a lawsuit. And, you know, so the first question is, do we want to go forward with pursuing this? I think made my position abundantly clear. You know, we've been in negotiations with the state for several months, and you know, I'm willing to pursue litigation if, you know, we can't reach a resolution. The problem that we have now is that we are still in negotiations with the state, And we have the deadline, as of next week, I think. So that's something that I think we need to discuss, and I think we would be remiss as a board if we didn't have a full, robust discussion of that publicly and where we all stand on that issue. And then the second issue is if we decide not to litigate, how we want to use the funds, and that's what we've been discussing. I mean, how we want to make up for the funding shortfall, and we are meeting with the Metro Council next week to have that discussion, so I think we all are in agreement that we need to discuss what our options are in that regard. I've said plenty, I guess, about where I stand with litigation. I think we have received legal advice and political advice. The legal advice that we have received is that, we have every right to go after this money. The political advice we received is that we may not want to sue. I really still have a few legal questions, and our attorney is not here tonight. But anyway, I would like to hear from other people who are on the other side of the fence on litigation, and just hear from other board members as to where they stand and what their thoughts are on litigation.
Okay, now let me ask you, are you going to put a motion on the floor? I know you brought it up a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
Are you going to offer a motion tonight?
I'm where I am right now is I am one member of a 9-member board, and I'm interested in hearing other viewpoints before I bring a motion.
Well,
Do I
we
have
need
move
to actually bring a
forward?
motion.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, then I will move to litigate.
Okay, is there a second?
I second.
Okay, discussion. Any discussion? Now's the time. Ms. Shepherd.
And I agree with you in that I know that we have the right, and maybe we even have the responsibility, because those monies are directly impact our students in MNPS. I think it would be a major distraction. I think it would take us away from what we really need to be focusing on. We have a lot of topics that are coming before us, and I really think that we need to sit back and think about what we need to be doing and not litigating. And we might win that battle, but lose the war. In that case, we might be able to win those monies back, but then we've set a precedent. We have sullied the waters. I think that we just need to move on. That's my personal opinion.
Any other discussion? Ms. Berry?
I'm torn on this subject. $3.4 million is a lot of money. We can do so much with it, and we're going to be talking about technology tonight, and clearly we have a great need for technology. I'm sorry that Chuck Cagle is not here, and I'm hopeful that the commissioner will indeed return this money. Is there someone here that can answer a question about when the state has sanctioned the school boards in the past across the state? Has there ever been a time when the money was not returned?
I think that was answered a couple of different times, and if I remember, there has not been an occasion where the funds had not been returned to a district.
And I think if we can possibly solve this and get this money returned without litigation, I think we all want that. My major concern is that I don't want budget time to come and council to tell us, well, you didn't need that 3.4, you didn't go after it, so we're not going to worry about giving you full funding. That's my major concern. So I'd like to hear what more people think about it.
I will offer my opinion on that, and prior to coming onto this board, I was also one of the, and I'll call it founding members of the Student Assignment Task Force. As you are all very well aware, that plan became it became the subject of a lawsuit that took us, was it 3 years in the making, the lawsuit, I think, after 3 years. When you consider the time and the money and the hours that people had spent, including myself having to take off work on several different occasions to go and testify in that case, there is very little value, in my opinion, of suing. There's very little value of litigation. When we talk about a $3.4 million lawsuit, we talk about the time that it's going to take, not just the time alone, but the expense, attorney's fees, fees for every single person who has been involved in this to testify, the time that it could take, and opinions, appeals. Bottom line is, we need to come up with a plan. We have already, I think, gone to the state on several different occasions. We are currently still attempting to regain those funds. But for me, to be perfectly honest with you, I don't think litigation is the smart thing to do. I think this $3.4 million could very easily turn into $6 or $7 million in time and expense if it is allowed to continue. And as Ms. Shepherd said, what are we looking at down the road? The grand scheme of things, the big picture for me is we are all here for a much bigger purpose than to continue to discuss and to put on the table this $3.4 million. It is a lot of money. I wish I had it in my pocket. It's a lot of money. And we can do a lot of great things with that money, with our students. And for anyone to think for 1 second that it did not affect every single child in our district is ridiculous. However, going back to my original statement, do we continue going down this road and possibly opening ourselves up to a bigger expense by litigating for this $3.4 million? Or do we work with our finance department and come up with a different way of trying to recoup these funds? Or maybe we don't recoup these funds this year, but we're going to be smart about it. How do we work with our finance department to come up with a workable solution that will keep us from going further into debt with this one issue? Dr. Register, do you have any comments?
My recommendation is to not file suit. I think for many of the reasons you stated, and I think it is counterproductive. Where we are a governmental agency. You're elected. I think it's much more productive if we look to compromise and coming to common understandings with our Commissioner of Education, with our governor, with our local government. I think that continuing to look back creates problems for us, and I think it could tie us up for months in litigation, appeals, and so forth, and I just don't see it as productive. So my recommendation to you is to not file suit.
Any other?
I think we should continue to work with the governor's office, with the commissioner's office. I would hope that the funds would be returned to the district.
Any other discussion?
I was just going to say a few things, and I'm just for the sake of having the discussion. I think I look at this a little bit differently than some other people, and I know that this board has been embroiled in some really complex, lengthy litigation, so I understand the sort of step back away from this. I think that this is a much simpler case, and the way I look at it is if we were to do this, we would hand it to our lawyers would handle it. I don't foresee it as being incredibly expensive. No one knows what's going to happen with litigation, but I think that we are paying Metro Legal lawyers anyway, and so I think my view on this is a little different. As an attorney, I'm all for compromise too. I just feel that our backs are against the wall because this is our last chance to have this discussion, and I feel that I still have some questions. I wish I don't know. Our attorney's not here, so I still have some questions, I guess, that I think we should be asking about sort of the process of what litigation would entail in this particular case. And the other, I guess, a couple other points that, I'm all for compromise too, but I feel like we've sort of been put in a position now where we're not, it's us, we have to give everything. I don't feel that we're compromising. I hope that we are. I hope that we can reach that point. And then the other thing I wanted to ask, how the funding, something that has been brought to light for me is how the funding might affect particular schools, because I've been told that possibly the lack of funding could affect charter schools differently than it could affect traditional schools? Are you aware of any difference there?
Chris, can you answer that?
I can. We were advised regarding the calculation of the per pupil amount that is transferred to charter schools based upon the State Department of Education calculation formula. We were advised to not reduce the calculation for that purpose by this $3.4 million, but that the intent was that this was to be considered a fine to the school district as if we received the dollars and then paid those dollars back to the State Department. We were advised that our BEP allocation has not changed. It's still as it originally was, but that this was to be treated as a fine. And so, therefore, the full amount would be included in the charter school calculation.
So we just have no choice on that. So the charters would be funded and the traditional schools would not, if we reject this money.
Well, the district would be, the district is subject to the penalty.
Right.
Whether that's passed along to individual school allocations or not would be a recommendation that we would make in how we solve the shortfall.
Okay.
Any additional discussion? Mr. Hayes?
I guess I'm seeking a point of clarification. In the previous meetings, you've advocated for outside counsel. So your motion tonight was that we litigate, and it was seconded. But behind the motion, are you advocating for outside counsel or continued counsel, or right? What's?
Well, I mean, I raised the motion for independent counsel. I still have questions as to whether we have received fully independent counsel during this process. And I guess I kind of assumed that we would be able to ask questions tonight. I would love to speak to our attorneys further about this, but if we do have a deadline of the 16th, I guess we'd have to call a special meeting for that. But I did raise that. I raised the issue of independent counsel at our last meeting, and we voted that down. So,
From a process standpoint, you've talked about that it wouldn't be time-consuming, and I have concerns that an hour of Dr. Register's time not focused and his staff's time not focused on moving the bar forward, right, is problematic. And I'm just wondering, in your experience as an attorney and litigating against the state or federal government, whoever, I don't know who you've litigated
no,
against.
and I haven't, and I'm not,
Or
and
who
I'm
you-
not. These are questions I think that we should be asking our attorney, because this is not my area of expertise. But I don't see this as complex as, say, the recent case that the desegregation case or something like that. And I think those are questions that I would feel more comfortable moving forward if we were able to ask sort of more process-oriented questions. And I think there's got to be a balance between, what this funding could do for our district, and then, how much time we would be putting into a lawsuit. I think those are the questions we need to be asking.
If, Dr. Register, if we, and maybe Mr. Henson as well, if we use fund balance for this and don't make any sort of other changes, is that fund balance is certainly something that could be used for other expenses?
The fund balance mainly exists for two reasons. One is for revenue shortfalls, and one would be for emergency type expenditures. Not to say that the board couldn't approve the use of fund balance really for any purpose. I would recommend using it for recurring expenses, but the board could vote to use fund balance for really any purpose. Of course, that process would include the Metro Council, because it would change the appropriation amount to the school district. It would increase it by whatever you're looking to use the fund balance. And so not only would it require board approval, it would require Metro Council approval to use the fund balance for any kind of additional expenditures.
It would seem that this is both, right? Revenue shortfall and an emergency. It's a one-time non-recurring expense, so it would seem appropriate to use fund balance for that sort of an expenditure. And it wouldn't necessarily seem appropriate to say, it's $3.4 million that we can just elect at the end of the year to use for something because we want to, right? For an ongoing continuing operation expense. Is that?
Yes, and if we're looking at it from a revenue shortfall perspective, then if there is any chance that that this money may be sent back to the district, or if there's the possibility that other revenues could cover this shortfall, then my recommendation would be to wait until the end of the fiscal year to monitor all sources of revenue rather than at this point in time going ahead and making that request of the council. I think monitoring the revenue projections and collections through the fiscal year would be a much better approach, particularly if there's any possibility that we may receive this money.
And fund balance today for MNPS is approximately $50 million, is that right?
Fund balance at June 30, 2012 was $55 million, which represents about 7.6% of the district's operating expenditures.
And it's commingled with Metro's general fund balance. Do you have any sense how big the general fund balance is?
Not off the top of my head, I don't.
Do you have any sense on how large the finance director would like for our fund balance to be in general to maintain a positive bond rating?
I think the Metro Finance Director would like our fund balance to be as large as possible for purposes of bond rating agencies.
When did Mr. Glover start to sweat? When it got below 20 or 10 or all the time? You know, when do we feel really, I mean, I think we feel comfortable with the fund balance today. Is it, if it was really, 10 million or 20 million, when people get nervous?
Well, as I said in the committee meeting, the Metro policy is a 5% fund balance minimum.
Mm-hmm.
The state recommendation is a 3% fund balance. Once you get below the 5%, then that's going to raise some flags with Metro. And then, as you get down closer to the 3%, then that's something that obviously is to be taken seriously.
Any additional questions, comments, discussion? There's a motion on the table to litigate. It has been raised and seconded. We are going to vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Say no.
No.
Motion fails. Ms. Frog, you also wanted to have a discussion on next steps. I think we've sort of done that within this
Yeah.
conversation.
Mhm.
Do you have any other questions?
I mean, I don't know, we don't really necessarily have to come to a resolution on either
No.
tonight.
No.
And I think this is something we need to continue discussing among ourselves and with council
Okay.
as well.
All right, thank you very much. We will move on to reports. We will start with the director's report. Dr. Register.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll ask our people who are making a presentation on technology and data to come forward. I think that's Laura Hanson and Fred Carr tonight. Before we do that, though, I do want to speak to another event that happened today, and that's the fact that the district, although we were a finalist for the next round of Race to the Top funding, we did not get that today. We actually ended up ranked 40th in the country from those almost 400 applications. We had a great application. I want to commend the people who developed and proposed the proposal. The decisions just came down today, and we've just received them. I have a technical review form here that's multiple pages, and I haven't had an opportunity to read it, but it shows that we just missed by a very slim margin. The competition was extreme across the country for these grants, and I want to say that it's a visionary document for us. I've said this several times publicly in the last couple of weeks. I think this Race to the Top application really serves as a blueprint for us for action, our next steps as we go forward, and that's recognized in the fact that the vision portion of this grant received a perfect score. 40 points of 40 total available for the vision, and So I look forward to implementing this proposal and sharing it further with the community and with others, even though we didn't receive the funding. I want to say this, the quick glance I've had through the proposal this afternoon shows me that the places where we were marked down are next steps in our blueprint. And I think as we continue forward with this, as we take those next steps, let us hope for another round of funding, and I think we'll be positioned very well in another year to receive this funding and go forward. The other thing I'll say is that we do not have a funding cliff. We have our current Race to the Top grant that still has about $12 million in it, according to Hank Clay. Hank, I believe that's about right, and I haven't seen the figures on that. But what we will do is really pause now and take a real hard look at how we're using the remaining funding from our Race to the Top grant now, which is significant and which will really help us advance our blueprint for the future. So we regret that we didn't get it. We were extremely competitive. We're very proud of the work, and I want to commend the work of the people in the district and our partners who helped put this proposal together. We'd be glad to share it with people who haven't seen it. I think it's online, actually. It is online, and also share the technical review form, which is quite informative. So Hank and Lisa Wiltshire, who is not here tonight due to a death in her family, really helped us develop this proposal along with many of you and other members of the administration. So we look forward to going forward with this. Now, the second part of my report tonight is the Technology and Data Transformational Leadership Group. I'll stop.
Yeah.
If you'd like to make a comment.
Madam Chair, I just want to jump in before we move off this Race to the Top thing, and I want to say I'm very familiar with this process from when Race to the Top started in 2009, and there were hundreds of school districts around the country competing for a very relatively small amount of money, and the fact that we surfaced in basically the top 10% of districts around the country is a remarkable comment about the direction things are moving in Metro Nashville Public Schools and the vision that's been articulated. I was looking at the scoring forms today. We outpaced New York City, Cleveland, Salt Lake City, a lot of very reform-minded districts in America, and I think coming up short is disappointing, but I'm awfully proud. I know every board member is of the quality of that application, and maybe if folks can get this funding cliff, fiscal cliff worked out in Washington, then we'll get a second round funded, and we'll get to keep on competing. So I really do congratulate everybody who was part of the process, and it was a great finish in my opinion.
It was a fantastic finish, especially since we were the only district in Tennessee who were in the finals. So
Hear, hear.
There you go.
Thank you very much. Fred, I'll turn it over to you, our Chief Operating Officer, and I might say for our viewing audience that this might be somewhat of a continuation of a conversation that we had in a work session when we were looking at technology, and this is our annual report on technology and data, and Laura and Fred, we'll turn it over to you.
This is also a continuation of your work session on Common Core. Because technology is a very integral part of the rollout and the assessment of the Common Core. So Laura is chair of the TLG. We currently do not have a community co-chair. We're actively recruiting a community co-chair for that group. And she has a prepared presentation, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some financial, and then we'll be open to questions.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Dr. Register, and board members. I'm excited to be here tonight to provide you with an overview of work of the Technology and Data Transformational Leadership Group. My name is Laura Hanson, and in addition to serving as the MNPS co-chair for this group, I am the director for the Information Management and Decisions Support Office. This presentation is designed to provide a very brief overview, which is why I'm reading, of where we are now with various initiatives and next steps. In your packet, you will find some additional information on the topics highlighted here tonight, as well as some of the foundational documents we've used to guide our work. First of all, I would like to publicly thank the many people, both in MNPS and in the community, for the time and effort they contributed to the MNPS Achieves reform process. At the end of last year, TLG committees were meeting no less than 2 times a week, and more often as needed. We received incredible ideas and guidance from those involved and provided a clear path to action. Various groups and individuals have been working very hard since that time to implement the recommendations made by the TLG members. As we move forward, participants from the past will be engaged again, and new members will be recruited to support the evolving work of our TLG. Before I go over the individual initiatives that are the core of our work, I wanted to bring your attention to the foundations upon which we are building. Some of you may remember that the TLG adopted the National Education Technology Plan created by the U.S. Department of Education in 2010 as the primary guiding document for our work. This plan is divided into 5 key areas of focus, each with recommendations for how technology should be used to support teaching and learning. These 5 areas are learning, assessment, teaching, infrastructure, and productivity. The strategies MNPS has chosen to pursue address the recommendations of the National Education Technology Plan, as you will see in the coming slides. Included in your packet, which was, I apologize, it's 60 pages, but there was a lot of information, is the executive summary of the National Education Technology Plan. And you will see in this presentation that each initiative is mapped to specific sections of that plan. You should you choose to reference this as we move through the overview of the work plans. The other foundational documents we use to guide our work are the National Education Technology Standards, created by the International Society for Technology in Education, also known as ISTE, as well as the essential conditions necessary to leverage technology for learning, also created by ISTE. The National Education Technology Standards are the standards for learning, teaching, and leading in the digital age, and are widely recognized and adopted worldwide. In your packet, you will find documents outlining these standards. It is worth noting that the Tennessee State Board of Education adopted the ISTE standards for teachers and students in 2008. And the MNPS Board of Education went further and adopted the ISTE standards for administrators in 2011. The Essential Conditions document helps us focus on key supports that need to be in place to help us ensure success. These documents have been critical in our planning for action. The 3 main focus areas for our activities include anytime access for all, digital teaching and learning, and data-informed decision-making. So let's take a closer look at these areas. One of the conditions in Nashville we recognized as a barrier to student achievement and a contributor to the achievement gap is the digital divide. Nashville is a city of bridges, and we are asking the community and its leaders to help us create another bridge, one that will span the digital divide that exists in our city. And just like the bridges we create over rivers that overcome geographic isolation, we are seeking to overcome the isolation our economically disadvantaged youth and families experience with regard to access to information and engaging learning opportunities afforded through technology and use of the World Wide Web. Research done by the National Center of Education Statistics in 2003 and supported by 2010 census results tells us that a significantly smaller percentage of disadvantaged students utilize computers at home compared to their peers of higher socioeconomic status. According to the 2011-2012 TESS survey completed by MNPS leadership in each one of our schools, it is estimated that only 56% of MNPS students have access to the internet at home, leaving a large percentage of our students without access to tools and learning resources that other students access and use regularly. Based on the fact that the achievement gap is defined by socioeconomic boundaries, as is the digital divide, we believe that by creating equity with regard to access to digital resources, we can make an impact on the achievement gap. The bridge we are proposing to build in order to overcome the digital divide in Nashville is called Anytime Access for All, and consists of 3 components. First, Connected Communities, which strives to ensure that all MNPS families have access to the internet from their home. Secondly, My Tech Initiative, which will help ensure that all MNPS students have access to, or ideally, ownership of, a personal computing device that can be used both in and out of school. And finally, an effort that will make available quality digital learning content to enhance learning for all MNPS students. You can see how Anytime Access for All maps to the 5 focus areas in the National Technology Plan, indicated by the blue boxes on the right. As I mentioned earlier, the references to the individual recommendations from that plan are indicated by the numbers next to each box. So I know it's a little complicated, but if you want to reference those as a crosswalk, you'll really see how things line up. It is important to understand that Anytime Access for All is not just an MNPS initiative. It will need to be a community initiative with participation from all stakeholders, business, nonprofit, government, citizens, parents, and students, in order for us to be successful in our goals. We have been in discussion with our state broadband initiative, Connected Tennessee, and its parent organization, Connected Nation, a national nonprofit organization dedicated to improving economic development and enhancing quality of life through expanded adoption, access, and use of high-speed internet and technology. These organizations will help us engage partners and create an implementation plan for this initiative. Connected Nation and Connected Tennessee have experience in doing this with other cities and states, and we are excited to have the opportunity to leverage their extensive knowledge and expertise to benefit Nashville's families. A few representatives from these organizations are here in the audience. Dave Matisoff, if you want to stand up real quick, is an outreach executive with Connected Nation. John Hamm is Connected Nation's Chief Financial Officer, and Corey Johns is the Executive Director of Connected Tennessee. Thank you for joining this evening, you guys. I know we even had some that traveled, so we're really happy you're here. They will be available to answer questions that you may have after the presentation. Some of the activities being planned to address Anytime Access for All initiative include working with all local internet service providers interested in participating. Connected Nation will facilitate low-cost internet access and technology purchases to MNPS families. These include such offers as the Internet Essentials program offered by Comcast that many of you have heard of, the Mobile Citizen program by Clearwire, and others as they develop. We will create a fund managed by Connected Nation and/or Connected Tennessee to enable participation by those families in extreme poverty. This fund will grow based on community donations, business sponsorships, and through a contribution program by which a portion of technology and internet purchased through Mobile Citizen and other provider discounts are allocated to help expand this fund. We will convene a community conversation, which will take the form of a Connected Community Summit, around the issue of broadband access, adoption, and the digital divide. This will be targeted for February of 2013. After this, we will perform neighborhood-based assessments to identify connectivity needs and available resources. Finally, we will facilitate the creation of an innovative place-based solutions to address barriers to access and internet adoption through solutions developed in partnership with local providers and other stakeholders. This work is actually being piloted right now in the Stratford cluster through the Promise Neighborhood Initiative, and an overview of this work is provided in your board packet. We have Robin Veenstra Vanderweel. Robin, will you stand out? She's the director of the Nashville Promise Neighborhood, and she will be here to answer any questions that you might have on that Promise Neighborhood initiative that's currently in the works. Okay, next. While Anytime Access for All is focused on building capacity to use digital resources during out-of-school time, MNPS also has a focus on how we leverage technology for digital teaching and learning during the school day. As you can see, this category of initiatives addresses all of the areas of the National Education Technology Plan and a large number of the recommendations as indicated by the number references. In an effort to create a learning technology plan for MNPS, district and community members are participating in a planning process in partnership with the Nashville Technology Council. Keisha Ray, Executive Director for MNPS's Learning Technology Department, and Colleen Hoy from C3 Consulting are leading the development of this plan. I know Keisha's here. Is Colleen here? Yes. Yeah, there's Colleen. Thank you all for being here too. The focus of this plan incorporates the first 3 initiatives listed on this slide: student technology literacy, curriculum design, and instructional design. And there is currently a subcommittee working on the plan for each of these areas. Our goal of achieving technology literacy for all MNPS students includes a focus on producing the technology skills and competencies needed to succeed on the new Common Core assessments in the very near term, and to be ready for the digital environments they will encounter in college and in the workplace. While the plan for student technology literacy is being developed, work has already begun. Our Learning Technology Department, led by Keisha, has been working to lay the foundation and engage schools in the process of getting our students up to speed on the basic technology skills that will be required to take the high-stakes Common Core assessment that will be delivered online in 2014. Our goal for curriculum design is to integrate learning technology into the MNPS K-12 curriculum. This effort is student and outcome focused and designed to enhance existing curriculum by embedding the age and grade level technology literacy skills and competencies and addressing the 21st century skill requirements included within those Common Core state standards. The final focus area for the Learning Technology Planning Committee is instructional design, with the goal of achieving 21st century teaching and learning in all MNPS classrooms. This area is teacher focused. Given the enhanced content the curriculum requires, we need to focus on the instruction teachers must provide and its required evolution across all grades. This will include creation of professional learning structures, embedding technology skills to support utilization of digital tools and content, modeling the use of digital resources, and creating engaging learning environments for our students. The next item on the list is a Bring Your Own Device initiative. MNPS came to the conclusion that the only way to maximize the number of students having access to technology devices on a regular basis, both in and out of school, was to leverage the technology devices that students own and are able to bring from home. This initiative will utilize the capacity built through Anytime Access for All initiative that provides opportunities for the purchase of low-cost devices by MNPS families. We are at the very early stages with regard to the investigation of all the aspects we need to address to build the capacity to leverage student-owned technology, but we know that there will be policy implications, support needs, logistical processes to be created, as well as infrastructure improvements to support this effort. We plan to implement a virtual desktop system that will allow students to access their personalized desktop from any technology device, which makes digital tools and student work products available from anywhere and anytime in a familiar format. Finally, our implementation of SchoolNet will allow us to create and track personalized learning plans for both teachers and students while linking digital resources with teacher effectiveness and Common Core standards. SchoolNet will also facilitate the sharing of digital teaching and learning resources developed by individuals within and across schools. Okay, next. The final area of our focus for our TLG is data-informed decision-making. The development of the data warehouse has been a primary focus for the past couple of years, as well as efforts to encourage data use by teachers and instructional leaders, primarily led by our cadre of data coaches under the leadership of Shannon Black. The MNPS Data Warehouse technical team, under the leadership of Vicki Philpo, has created an incredible tool that has garnered national attention and continues to develop with the inclusion of staff and financial data in the works, and the anticipation of post-secondary data to be included in the near future. Moving forward, we want to have an enhanced focus on data literacy, with the goal of increasing understanding and use of data not only by MNPS teachers, leaders, and staff, but also parents, students, and community partners. We believe that the more information we have, the better our ability to target instruction, intervention, and enrichment to benefit student learning. We also believe that others working with our students benefit in the same way. We rely on community partners to assist us in maximizing outcomes for our students and have made some efforts to share data with parental consent with programs providing services to students during out-of-school time. The Nashville After Zone Alliance, an initiative out of the mayor's office that focuses on establishing a network of after-school program opportunities for middle school students, is one of these entities. And we are currently working with the Nashville Promise neighborhood to finalize a data sharing agreement that will provide access to providers using social solution software, who is a partner with the U.S. Department of Education, to provide a data system in support of the Promised Neighborhood implementation. We have received support and encouragement for these efforts by national organizations like the National League of Cities, the Forum for Youth Investment, the Data Quality Campaign, and the Wallace Foundation. This foundational work will be important as we expand our formal partnerships with program providers who support our students and their families through the MNPS Community Achieves initiative. As we build and expand our data systems, their scope, and stakeholder groups who use this information, it becomes increasingly important to have a good data governance system. Data doesn't belong to IT department. Data is an organizational asset, and a very important one, that all stakeholders have a responsibility to maintain. The discipline of data governance embodies a convergence of data quality, data management, data policies, business process management, and risk management surrounding the handling of data in an organization. Through data governance, organizations look to exercise positive control over the processes and methods used by their data stewards and custodians to handle data. This builds capacity of the data system to meet the needs of the stakeholders in efficient and effective ways. Okay, on to the next one. So why does all this matter? All these activities and infusion of data require a great deal of work and significant amount of financial investment. So why does it matter? The work outlined in the previous slides address the priorities we have as a district that will ultimately improve student achievement. Equity and access to the resources needed for learning in the 21st century are critical to ensuring that all students have the opportunity to be successful. As we move forward in a global digital world, we need to make sure that as our teaching and learning becomes more reliant on digital resources, that we don't increase the achievement gap due to the inequity of access to these resources. Personalized instruction. We know that to make every learner successful, we need to personalize instruction. Technology and digital resources build capacity in our classrooms for personalized learning plans to be created, content to be assigned, students to efficiently access these personalized activities, frequent individual assessment of progress to be performed, and adjustments to instruction to be provided in a more productive and efficient way. Preparing students for college and career. We live in a digital world, and it would be a challenge for any of us to come up with an example of a post-secondary program or career that does not require at least a basic ability to use a computer and digital tools. We need to ensure we are adequately preparing all our students with the knowledge and experience they need to be competitive in today's society. This includes exposing them to the digital tools and content that increase their readiness for college, work, and life. Parent engagement. Oftentimes, those of us who have access to the internet from home take for granted how valuable that connectivity is. Think for a moment what it would be like if you were unable to access email from home. Now, some of you are sweating already. Or Google something you wanted to know about. Think about how often you are told to go to a website to get more information. In this increasingly digital world, written communication and information is often summarized, and you are provided with an internet address to get the full story. Think how often we do that here at MNPS and refer our parents and stakeholders to resources and information that exist on our own website. It is easy to forget that many of our families do not have readily available access to things we want to communicate to them. We advocate for the use of grade speed by parents to keep up with their students' progress between report cards. Yet we sometimes forget that the parents of our most vulnerable students aren't able to access this critical tool on demand. To engage fully, our parents need to have access to the information that will allow them to be fully informed about our schools and their students' progress. Student engagement. Digital resources are effective because students enjoy the interactive nature of the learning that is provided through the use of digital content. Digital resources allow content to be brought to life in a way that students can manipulate. It engages multiple senses. Concepts can be applied and demonstrated in relevant ways, all of which have been shown to facilitate learning and retention of information. Empowering students to seek out information that interests them also allows them to engage their own passions and expand their learning at will. Think of how often those of us who have on-demand access to information on the internet Google a term or concept we hear in passing to learn more about it based on our own curiosity. We want every student to be able to leverage their own natural curiosity and interest to expand their learning. Finally, data-informed decision-making, a necessary skill if we want teachers to instruct to the needs of our learners, if we want parents to know how they can encourage and support our students, if we want students to know where their strengths lie and where their efforts need to be focused to improve, if we want the community to support our students and target their interventions and enrichment opportunities in the right places with the right people. Access to the internet, digital teaching and learning, and data-informed decision-making all matter and can have an extremely positive impact on our students and their families in the near term and prepare them for the future, which will certainly become more reliant on technology, digital tools, and anytime access to information. This work does not come without a price, however, and to move forward, we will require intentional focus and financial investment, not only on the part of the school district, but by their community as a whole. Now I'd like to turn it over to Fred Carr to talk a little bit more about financial investment that we will need to make in the near term to push this work forward and address the immediate critical need we have to ready our infrastructure for the online testing requirements that are quickly approaching. And then we'll open up the floor to questions.
Thank you. I would like to point out, as a part of my presentation, the importance of the school board accepting the ISTE standards. This is the international standard for technology and education. ISTE is a very large organization. It's the largest educational technology organization in the world, and we are actively implementing their recommendations, which have been well thought out. And I also would like to point out that ISTE is also a very personal organization to MNPS, as the international president-elect for ISTE, preparing to serve a 2-year term, is Dr. Keisha Ray.
All right. Nice job, Dr. Keisha Ray.
Very nice job. We are looking forward to having major influence at ISTE over the next 2 years of her presidency, and she is president-elect right now. To look at where we need to go in terms of technology, I'd like to look backwards for just a minute. In 2006, Lance Lott, who was then Director of IT, presented to the school board a 5-year plan for technology that focused on a business-grade infrastructure, providing broadband to all of the schools, a large commitment to professional development, involvement of the community, and a request for $15 to $20 million of capital each year to fund that vision. And that was in 2006. The history of the capital funding for technology, 2006 was $13.5 million, 2007 $14.5 million, 2008 0, 2009 $15 million, 2010 0, last year $5 million, and this year $5 million. So I think it's important to look back and look at the vision that was established back in 2006 to know where we've come and where we are right now. Originally, and technology, you never really catch up. All you try to do is keep within sight of the most current kinds of things that are there. So the original plan called for 3 classroom network connections in each classroom across the district. And that is now really completely outdated, as most of the devices that students use are wireless. So in the initial rollout of technology, wireless was usually limited to the main office areas of the school and the library. Now we are buying a lot of wireless carts, which contain 20 to 30 either iPads, netbooks, laptops to hand out in a classroom, and we need that wireless connectivity to be able to connect all of them to the internet at the same time. So one of our big challenges has to do with infrastructure. When in 2014, the Common Core implementation testing, which is the PARC testing, is going to require all students to take their tests digitally and online. So we've got to have enough online broadband connectivity available for students to all connect at the same time. As a test, 2 years ago, as a matter of fact, it was 2 years ago this month, we were a test site for the state for high school end of course testing to be done digitally and online. And we made sure that before we went into it, we had at our high schools enough broadband connectivity so that the students could all log in to the testing site at the same time and take their test. And we had calculated that and were very confident that we had that broadband ability. However, the state didn't. And when all of our kids logged on to take their test, it crashed the state AT&T network, which took 2 days to get back in place. So again, it was a trial and we learned, but those are the kinds of things that we have to plan ahead for so that when we do all of our online testing in particular, where everybody logs on at the same time, we have that bandwidth and infrastructure to cover that. So our current infrastructure plan is calling for broadband wireless in all areas of all of our school buildings, and that price tag, and we're currently working on that right now, is about $15 million to roll out the broadband. The good news about that is broadband wireless is easier to install in a building than wired networks because we don't have to run all the wires through the hallways and have crews in doing wiring. It is much simpler installation, and it also gives us access to the Bring Your Own Device initiative that Laura mentioned a minute ago, and that's where students that have their own internet-ready tablets or smartphones or laptops can bring their own devices to school and connect and use their own devices for instruction. So what we're trying to do right now is spend our money building out the infrastructure, the part that you don't see but is critical to making certain that the rest of the devices that we purchase do work. So Common Core curriculum is delivered a lot through digital. It is also exclusively tested online through digital, and that starts in 2014. We actually had an assessment review today of where we are in terms of our Common Core rollout as a district, and we feel pretty good about where we are as compared to other districts around the state and around the country, but that doesn't mean that we're there yet. We have a lot of work to do in terms of staff development and infrastructure and devices. So looking at our devices, we currently have about 45,000, a little over 45,000 computers in our inventory. 12,000 of those are currently 5 years or older. So that's technology that we're looking at needing to replace. The standards have been published for the minimum technology that we need for this testing in 2014, and we do need to replace those 12,000 that are over 5 years old. An additional 7,300 will be greater than 5 years old by this summer. So it's not something that you ever really get there. It's a constant refresh cycle. Businesses generally refresh on a 3 to 5 year cycle. Many of our machines that are older than 5 years are 7 or 8 or 9 years old. So it is a real challenge in trying to build out the network infrastructure, number one, and then providing devices that all students can access and use. And the bring your own device is one strategy of doing that. But as we had in our, as was mentioned in our earlier today assessment of Common Core, it's really challenging to think of a student trying to write a 3-page writing assessment on their smartphone with their thumbs, although they can do it pretty well. So those are some of the challenges that we have to look at. And then beyond those basics of connectivity and devices, we have the blended learning support. And blended learning is where basically you're delivering content through digital options rather than a textbook. And we are, this, by the way, is not way in the future. This is now. We currently have a number of classrooms that are utilizing blended learning with their students, and it is a very successful model. When we have all of these devices out there, we're going to need increased IT support to work on the devices. We currently have a very strong IT staff. Will, you can cheerlead on that one because we got you going tonight. That work really hard and can figure out a lot of problems, but with 45,000 devices, there's not enough of them for the future. So that has to be considered as we move forward into the digital age. And then virtual desktop is kind of the visionary thing right now, but it's basically, and Windows 8 actually is incorporating it into their marketing strategy for Windows 8, which is where if you have a smartphone or a laptop or a tablet or a computer or any other device, Windows 8 looks the same. And the ultimate goal is for every student to have their own desktop that's customized, that belongs to them, that is their learning portal to all of their learning content, and it is theirs, and it is there on any device that they pick up and use. They can access that learning portal. And again, that's not that far in the future because that's Windows 8's current marketing just for Windows 8, is you can pick up any device and it all looks the same with that technology. So with all of that information, I'm sure you have some questions, and we'll be glad to try to respond to those.
We have lots of questions, I'm sure. We'll start on this side of the room. Anyone over here have questions? Mr. Hayes?
I have a quick one. I just want to make sure, I think I understand this correctly. Students are already bringing their own devices into the school, right? They've got cell phones and iPads and laptops, or those that have them, they do, but we don't necessarily have a portal for them to connect to. We don't open the Wi-Fi network for them necessarily, for every student necessarily.
We do in some schools, and we are rolling that out in others. The challenge, which we're up to, by the way, is throttling that student access to the broadband so that our critical functions like Chancery SMS and our other kinds of critical infrastructure things, data warehouse, can run, and then we open up the rest of the bandwidth to students. We had an interesting experiment last year. We installed a wireless port at Antioch High School and opened it up. It was through our filtered system, but it was opened up, not password protected. And we wanted to see how long it would take for the students to figure out it was there and connect to it. In 2 days, we had to throttle it back because it was overwhelming our network in Antioch High School. So the demand is there. The kids are ready for it.
To clarify, though, they're already bringing their own devices?
They are bringing their own devices. Our cell phone policy and device policy varies a little bit by school, but the district policy is you can have your devices in school, which is really interesting because other progressive districts like New York City still don't allow students to bring them to school.
Ms. Shepherd and then Mr. Pinkston.
Lots of great information. I really do appreciate the report. Fred, you mentioned something that we have, by the time we have 2014 testing, there will be in excess of 19,000 computers that will have to be refreshed. What's the total that we would have to have in keeping that figure in mind?
About 15 million to install new wireless, 9 million for computers.
I think it was estimated to be about $9 million.
Here it is. MNPS needs approximately 9 million to refresh and add to its computer inventory in 2013, which is approximately 12,000 devices.
Wow. Second question. In how many blended learning classrooms do we have, and what grade levels are they primarily?
I told Dr. Ray before the meeting, when the blended learning question came up, I would defer to her.
That's fair.
Good evening. So all of our AP and IB classrooms are set up for blended. They'll go live in January with full blended. And then we have schools in the innovation zone that are blended K through 8. So Buena Vista is a great example of a blended model. It's an elementary.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Mr. Pinkston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not so much a question as a comment or an observation that I think it's important for us to share at every step in the process as we get into the budget cycle, as we get into technology implementation and re-implementation in the years ahead. This is not about these technology investments, is not about keeping up with the Joneses. This is a core reform effort. And it's not about online testing for the sake of online testing or responding to some state mandate. This is part of a national movement toward common assessment that's 40-plus states. It's an extension of the conversation of Common Core, which is moving the same number of states to a set of internationally benchmarked standards so that we're finally moving forward as a country. And I just want to say that I think it's important to remind our friends at the council, as we go into the conversation, that this is not just about rebooting, 12,000 or 15,000 computers and wireless. This is about something much, much bigger. So I think, we can't say that enough. And I think it's important to just keep reminding people of that at every step of the process.
And I have a couple of questions myself. 56% of our students have home internet access right now.
Yes.
That's it.
That's according to the test survey that is done every year. And principals look at their population and then report their findings. And I think that's collected by the state, if I'm not mistaken.
And we've also asked for that information, and that 56% is fairly consistent. So the Anytime Access for All initiative, which is really a community-wide initiative, but it's focused, because we're initiating it, it's focused on our families and our students, and that's why we have partnered with Connected Nations and Connected Tennessee to really turn this into a reality. That is something that we will come back to the board to get your support when we have solidified that plan completely, because it can really make a difference in Nashville, not only in education, but in economic development for the entire city.
Okay. And the Anytime Access for All, I think, is phenomenal. To put the access in the hands of every single student who needs it is absolutely fantastic. The ownership of the devices is even better, because we will have so many children who will not be able to afford it. So many families who will not be able to afford even the lowest cost internet access. So I think it's fantastic that we are looking at ways to provide that to them. I almost jumped out of my chair when you mentioned bring your own devices. I have just been so excited about that process, and I tell you why. And I've mentioned this before. Last year, during the Tennessee School Boards Association conference, I actually got to sit in on a a session that Greenville High School put on, and it was about bringing your own devices. They've had technology in their schools for a very long time now. One of the things that excited me, Dr. Strode, who's the executive principal there, did a presentation where she talked about, well, actually, she brought one of her teachers in to do the presentation, but she was so excited. And what he does is he uses the devices that the students bring to the classroom as a learning tool. It's a French class. So what he generally does is he'll throw out something in French, and the students will have to reply via text in English, or he'll do it vice versa. And so it gets the students engaged in learning, and they don't even realize they're learning. They just think it's a competition. So that's one of the ways. Another presentation was one of the elementary schools in Greenville County was when they talked about how these students travel around the world via internet. They will have classroom interactions with children in China. They'll have classroom interactions with children in our own country. But it's all a part of technology, and these kids learn by using the iPads, and they use their own devices. So when you talked about bringing your own devices, I thought I was just going to jump up out of my chair. So I'm really excited about that initiative. I know it's not going to be without its challenges. I think one of the things that Dr. Strode talked about was how some of the old school teachers still look at it as a way to cheat. Some of the new school teachers are so super excited about it they can hardly contain them. So I think it's a learning process.
Yes.
There will be transition, going into it. You have to think about policy. There's just a whole lot to think about, but I think we are behind the curve if we don't jump ahead of it. Right now, I don't know very many kids right now who don't have access to some sort of technology, and that's who I rely on. If there's something that goes wrong with my phone, I rely on them because they know better than we do in most cases. That's how they learn, with social media, with all this technology. That's how they learn, and that is our future. So for us to get in front of it is going to be crucial for the ongoing learning for our children. So I'm really excited about that. That wasn't a question, but I was really
fine.
excited.
Thank you.
You talked a little bit about the cost of implementation, but I think that kind of did it for me. That was just really exciting for me. So, and in Greenville County, they already have information on their website. I was just looking at it, but it's really good information to have. It's really exciting. It might be something we could even look at and say, hey, how'd you guys do that?
Yeah.
What are your plans? How did you implement this? So they're in our own
Definitely-
backyard.
Yeah,
So
I'll
there
go
you
and
go.
review that one.
So, but thank you. Great presentation. Any other questions?
I have a
Dr.
question.
Gentry.
So what component of the budget numbers or projected numbers that you believe that you need speak to securing the devices? So when we talk about having iPads or laptops or mobile devices, you have the issue of ensuring that they're powered, ensuring that, and we've talked about securing the network and making sure they can only get to where you need them to get to. It talks about if I walk out of the door with that device, have we factored in the cost of software that makes that device useless outside of the walls of the facility? Can you speak to that?
Actually, the software doesn't make the device useless outside because we want them to use it everywhere. But what it does do is allows us to track the device. Wherever it connects to a network, we can track the device. It's a little bit more challenging with iPads, but the technology is really improving so that we can do that also. But all of our laptops, our Windows-based machines, are equipped with software that allows us to track and know where that device is plugged in and when. So it is one of those challenges that particularly school districts across the country are facing right now, is the security of the device itself, and to keep it from being stolen. I think Hank lost one last week that was stolen out of a hotel room. And so it happens, and that is a challenge, but we do have the software that allows us to track where the device is.
Hank's pretty excited about you putting him out there like that.
So I think
It wasn't his fault. He wasn't in the room when it disappeared. So.
well, HCA would say that makes it his fault, but we'll go there later. So my question is, do we have the numbers that you shared? Does the software that, if you were saying that we want these devices to be able to be taken home, does the dollars that you've shared, does it factor in the cost of that software for that type of tracking to be able to wipe the machine if you need to remotely and things of that nature?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Or just one.
Ms. Kim?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I mean, it sounds like you have an enormous challenge in front of you, both in terms of, working out the funding and then actually implementing. And having done my own implementation before on technology stuff, I know it can be incredibly complex, especially given the number of users and different types of users and configuring, et cetera, et cetera. So my question was more around, and 2014 is not that far off, and to others people's points about this is a core part of the reform effort and that we do need to have XYZ definitively in place before we hit our own cliff. What is there how are you thinking about the management of all the steps and the milestones? Is there a project plan that governs all this whereby we just know we're keeping on track so we don't reach a point in 2014 we're like, oh my goodness?
Yes, there is. As a matter of fact, we have a very large spreadsheet. We've prioritized all the schools as to basically infrastructure is what we're looking at. That's where we're focused right now. For the devices, information is just now coming out about the types of devices that we can use for assessment. So that's something that the Park Consortium is, as a matter of fact, they released some additional information this week. So as of this point, it can run on iPads or laptops, and we heard today even smartphones, although I just can't see doing a high-stakes assessment on a smartphone, but that's maybe because I struggle with it sometimes. But yes, we do have a project plan. We do have milestones. It is particularly funding dependent. We have some plans in place that will allow us to move quickly with some different vendors in terms of getting the wireless in place. So we're not necessarily just depending upon our own internal MNPS teams to do the installation. So we do have that in place.
And just out of curiosity, where do we stand now if you had to do a red, yellow, or green light on progress?
Around readiness for the assessment?
Probably bright yellow, in that we know where we are and we know where we need to go, and we have a plan to get there. And based upon the information that we got today from a vendor that works with school districts all over, we're actually in much better shape because we already have a detailed plan in place. They were telling us that there are a number of districts that don't have even a plan in place to address the technology needs.
So is that the part that SchoolNet plays?
You want to do that one? What's that? SchoolNet is actually more of a teacher tool.
Okay.
It is the teacher's virtual desktop where all of the teachers' resources and where they call the roll and where they enter test grades and where they find their videos for instruction and their staff development opportunities. All of that is in SchoolNet. So SchoolNet is basically teacher-centered software.
Any other questions?
I just want
Ms. Rowe?
I just want to echo the comments that several people have made about how crucial it is for us to continue to fund and implement, this technology so that we can compete. And I'm really shocked at how little we've had in funding over the past several years. And you said 2 years we had $0. Was there a reason for that, or is it just?
Yeah, I can speak to that.
Okay.
We've had an economic crisis in our country, and the place where it's impacted us, and I want to commend Metro government, Mayor Dean, for really standing up and funding the school system. However, there's an impact. it's the same impact that we've had from not having building funds over the last couple of years, where we've not been able to really put money into capital needs across the board. So that's really been the reason for a lot of that deferral and delay. Chris, you want to say something?
I agree, and was just going to follow up. It was directly related to the debt capacity of Metro government, particularly as it relates to the economic downturn, which led to the shortfall in sales tax collections, et cetera. But those 2 years that were mentioned, there was no capital plan submitted or approved for the entire Metro government. So it wasn't just technology and it wasn't just MNPS. It was the fact that there was no capital plan submitted those 2 years, submitted or approved.
I think, any other questions? Fantastic, fantastic.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
That concludes my director's report.
Okay. We will move into committee reports. Budget and Finance, Mr. Pinkston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Budget and Finance Committee, which is the committee of the whole, so meaning all of us, met immediately before this in public session to talk about a couple of things that we've discussed already in this meeting, including an item that was on the consent calendar to make our mid-year operating adjustments. 2 items that we haven't discussed in the room I just wanted to make a quick note of. First, as everyone knows, the mayor announced a few weeks ago a retirement incentive for employees of general government in Metro government. We have the option as a school system, as part of Metro government, to participate in that program. We had a discussion about the fact that the timing is not great for us. The deadline for that retirement incentive is in February, Mr. Henson. For general government employees, we obviously need our teachers through the end of the school year at least. So we didn't say that we didn't take it off the table. We just decided we're going to keep discussing it and potentially, if we want to move forward, make some modifications in the future. But we need to study that a lot more carefully before we make a decision, yay or nay. The second thing, just for the public to know, the Budget Committee and the budget process calendar for Metro Nashville Public Schools looks like this at the moment. We start in early March and conclude in early April. March 5th, the Budget and Finance Committee will meet to begin considering a first draft of the fiscal 13-14 operating budget for the school system. We'll continue meeting over the course of that month, leading up to, hopefully, if we get everything done on time, April 9th, final approval of the budget. There will be a public hearing on April 2nd, so if people want to go ahead and mark that on their calendars, please do so, and we'll advise of any calendar changes as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pinkston. Director's Evaluation, Ms. Kim.
Thank you. Like the Budget and Finance Committee, this is a committee of the whole, and we met yesterday and sought and achieved alignment on 2 different things. The first one was our short-term approach to our director's evaluation, and the second was our long-term approach to our director's evaluation. So for the short term, well, first of all, as a piece of context, there is a handbook that was last revised in October of 2009 that outlines the philosophy and general expectations of all parties in regards to the evaluation. And we decided in the short term that we will follow broadly that process because it is the one that was set forth and under which Dr. Register has been operating from an expectation standpoint. As of yesterday, we have launched that process, and we will conclude the evaluation over the course of the year by early February. So that's the short term. At the same time, like all good things, we evolve, and the district has evolved since 2009, and so we had a good discussion about what that implies for the philosophy and expectations moving forward. And ideally, we move pretty snappily on that because we want to make sure that, again, expectations are broadly clear on all parties so that a year from now, no one anywhere is saying, oh, I wasn't expecting that. That was not clear to me. So we're going to go through a process of now revising for the long term, if that makes sense. So we have some good ideas on that. One quick note just on that, in case anyone is wondering, just broad brushstrokes, I think the big takeaway there is that in 2009, I think that process was very much reflective of the needs of the district at the time. It was, I believe, brilliantly executed by Dr. Gentry in terms of developing that process and got us to where we are at the moment. And now we're seeing that we have evolved and we are ready now to take the next leap. And that if you think of it in a super binary way, there being a process-oriented evaluation versus an outcome-oriented evaluation, process meaning check, check, check on all the strategies, outcomes more focused on student outcomes, that we concluded that the old process is perhaps more process-heavy than outcomes-oriented. And so we want to right that balance and make the pendulum swing a little bit more so that we are accounting more for the outcomes that we want to see across the district. Again, that doesn't mean process doesn't matter and outlining the things that we think will lead to the outcomes we want, but we just want to right that balance a little.
Is that it?
Oh, that's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Youth Safety Summit, Ms. Shepherd.
Wow, following on the heels of that, mine will be a lot less technical. The Youth Safety Summit Committee met last Friday at noon at the Martin Center. We have set the date for the 3rd Annual Youth Safety Summit for Saturday, April the 6th. We have yet to decide on a location, but we will be doing that at our next meeting. Our keynote speaker this year will be Craig Scott with Rachel's Challenge. Rachel's Challenge is an organization established by the family of Rachel Scott, who was a victim in the Columbine shootings. They speak around the country to various groups to discourage bullying and to inspire their audiences with the life of Rachel Scott. We are fortunate to have Nissan as our sponsor for this event, and we want to thank Ms. Mays for making that happen. And our next meeting will be at 7 a.m. on Friday, January 4th at the Martin Center, Dr. Register's favorite time of the day. So that concludes my report.
Dr. Register's smiling at that time. I'm not looking at him, though, because it was her. Naming of schools, Dr. Brannon?
This committee will meet December 20th at 4 o'clock.
Thank you. The only thing that I have on the board chair's report is the committee assignment of Amy Frog as the class representative for Metro Schools, and thank you for taking that on. That concludes my report for this evening. Are there any announcements? We'll start with Dr. Gentry. Dr. Brannon?
No.
Ms. Spearing?
Yes. I had the wonderful opportunity to attend the Pearl Cone Academy Entertainment Magnet High School tour over the past couple of weeks, and this is the only entertainment high school in the whole country. I think we're way ahead of the country in so many ways, and this is one of them. And hats off to Sonia Stewart and her staff for preparing students not only to enter college, but also to begin a career in the entertainment business when they leave high school. They're also in the process of building a state-of-the-art recording studio. And that's going to be used not only at the school, but other people will be able to come in, other companies, music companies will be able to come in and rent that space for different experiences. Tomorrow there will be another Chamber of Commerce tour at Maplewood High School, which is in my district, and that will be December 12th from 8:15 to 9:30, and we hope we'll have a good turnout for that. Also, I got an opportunity to visit communities in school, and that was started by Bill Milliken 30 years ago. And his belief was that every child has the right to be just adored by some adult in their life. And that's one of the things that he tries to provide in this organization, is to have a community of support for students who are at risk. And he's written a third book, I think, called From the Rearview Mirror, which is a really good book. I see several of you nodding. Also, we had the state collaborative on reform education SCORE that was mentioned earlier in the meeting. And Rose Park Math and Science Magnet Middle School had that 2012 prize award last week, and I had the opportunity to sit by Meredith Libby during that time. Those kids were so excited, weren't they, Dr. Register? They were so thrilled, and the enthusiasm in that building was so magnificent that at one point I looked over at Meredith, and we both had big alligator tears in our eyes from just being in the presence of these students that were so on fire with their achievement and being able to celebrate that. There's an insurance trust meeting tomorrow at 4 o'clock. And also I want to say congratulations to the students who will be graduating from the non-traditional setting high schools this next week, the Academy at Old Cockrell, the Academy at Opry Mills, and the Academy at Hickory Hollow. And a big congratulations also to those who have worked so hard on providing an alternative for students so that our graduation rate can be increased. And that goes to Dr. Register, Jay Steele, Linda DePriest, and the group that work with you guys. This is magnificent to be able to have these students graduating at this time, and congratulations to those students. That concludes my announcement.
Ms. Kim?
Yeah, just a quick shout out to Dr. Carr and her team out at Head Middle School. She welcomed me into the school community to attend their Parents and Pastries event, and I learned a lot about what's on the minds of parents, number one, but then also it was very clear that they were very proud of the school, and especially her communication strategy out to her community, her broader community, so I stole some good ideas on that. And I was also named a top Tiger of the day, which I was excited about too. So a big shout out to that school and Dr. Carr and what she's doing.
Ms. Shepherd?
Just a couple. To piggyback on Ms. Spearing's, I will be at the Academy at Opry Mills next Wednesday, a week from tomorrow, at 9 a.m. And they will have their students will be graduating, and I really would like to encourage all the members of my community to come out there. It'll be around the stage for that. And then on I know it's early, but on Thursday, January the 10th, Deloitte and the volunteers from Deloitte will be holding FAFSA night at McGavock High School. And I just want to give a huge thank you to John George and that organization and all of their volunteers for coming out to help our students with this most important event. They do this every year for us. We're not one of their adopted high schools, but we are in their community, so they come out every year, and we really do appreciate their efforts at McGavock High School. So thank you to all of them.
Mr. Pinkston?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to piggyback on something that Ms. Shepherd said. I, in addition to serving on this board, I serve on the board of the Tennessee Student Assistance Corporation. So I want to encourage everybody to fill out the FAFSA. I can hardly say that word, FAFSA, F-A-F-S-A, for those graduating seniors. That's the form that will help get you financial aid. So it's important for everybody to communicate, fill out the FAFSA. Also, piggybacking on Ms. Spearing, joined her and Ms. Kim and others at the Community and Schools event recently. I mostly just want to say a shout out to my friend, Francie Hunt, who is the friend of a lot of people in this room and around this community, a longtime friend of public education in Nashville, and she is doing great work at Communities and Schools now. Two other quick things. Actually, just one more quick thing. I had the honor, not last weekend, but the weekend before, of joining Congressman Cooper, State Representative Jason Powell, Councilman Fabian Bedne, to help open Casa Atzafran, which is a new community center on Nolensville Road in the heart of mighty District 7. This is a major initiative of Conexión Americas and is a multi-million-dollar investment, probably the first in a very long time in South Nashville. It's going to function as a hub for education, healthcare, and social services for our new American community. It is already turning out to be a cultural and an architectural icon in a city that is filled with hard acts to follow. This has been in the works for a number of years. It's a testament to the passion of the Conexión co-founders, Renata Soto and Jose Gonzalez, their entire team. I'm awed by the work that they've done over the past decade, and if anyone wants to be inspired and see the art of the possible, I want you to visit Casa Atzafran. You'll be so impressed. Thank you.
Mr. Hayes?
Thank you. December 20th, following Dr. Brandon's naming of schools committee meeting at 4 o'clock, at 5 o'clock, there will be a work session focused entirely on facilities and student assignment in preparation for the capital needs budget. So for folks who can't attend, I would certainly encourage you to watch it. It will be fascinating as we talk openly about some of our facilities challenges, our long-term capital needs, specifically around deferred maintenance and maintenance of our existing facilities, but also how we think about student assignment and assign students as well as our growth. So I would encourage you folks at home to watch it. Should be a great meeting.
Ms. Brogue? Okay. I have just a few announcements. On Monday, December 17th, as has been mentioned, well, this one hasn't been mentioned, 10:30 a.m. is the education report card release. That will be at the Adventure Science Center. If you are able to attend, I encourage you all to please be there. Also, Monday, December 17th, 3 p.m., the Joint Council Budget and Education Committee meeting. That will be in Council Chambers downtown. That is at 3 p.m. Tuesday, December 18th, as has been mentioned, at 2 p.m. is the Academy at Old Cockrell graduation. Wednesday, December 19th at 9 a.m. is the Academy at Opry Mills graduation. Also on Wednesday, December 19th at noon is the Academy at Hickory Hollow graduation. I'm looking forward to all three of those graduations. Thursday, December 20th, Mr. Hayes just mentioned the work session, and our next regular board meeting will be on January 8th, 2013. Also, please add to your calendars a board retreat. Details will follow, but the dates right now are January 25th and 26th. One final thing I want to add, it is cold and flu season. Please wash your hands and carry your hand sanitizer. Dr. Register, any additional comments? Ms. Frogue?
There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned. 25th? Oh, no. Is it definite?